And in terms of the safety measures, we're talking at the beginning of March 2020. Everything was still very new to people. People were not sensitized for how to properly behave in the public realm. Social distancing, sanitizing, and so on was still very new to us. We are very used to it by now. But one of the first things actually that we did was to create a video that would showcase how a visit to our center would look like. I would like to actually speak to you about that point in time specifically. It was the beginning of March, and we were scheduled to have a joint opening of two exhibitions. One group show called The Place I Call Home, and one solo show, Rearranging the Riddle, New Works by Sheikha Al-Mazrui. And unfortunately, in that time, we had to cancel the opening of the exhibition due to the lockdown that was implemented at that time. And this exhibition was a part of a Gulf UK-wide culture and sport program supported by the UK Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. And it was delivered by the British Council in partnership with Photo Gallery Wales. After having experienced this new situation, we received a grant by the British Council in order to emphasize more the online programming aspect of things, in order to facilitate that visitors could actually enjoy the exhibition from the comfort of their own home and have different online programming features as part of this new engagement, let's say, with the digital. So one of them was, for example, the filmed artist interviews, but also teaser films for usage on social media, a 360-degree virtual tour, a photo competition, a narrated curators tour, as well as short films about home. This was a master film about the show itself. We had these teaser films as well, where the artists are explaining their artworks. And they're also speaking about the topic of the exhibition, which was becoming so much more relevant at that time. The show was called The Place I Call Home, and it was looking at artists from the Gulf countries and artists from the UK, both reflecting on what home means nowadays, especially in transient countries like the UAE, and in general with a more global society. What does home mean, apart from the physical aspect of things, but also the home in your mind, the home in your heart, so to speak. So this topic was becoming, of course, much more relevant in a time of lockdown, where people were forced to stay at home for long periods of time. So one more aspect of our engagement was the establishment of a virtual tour, so that you could actually go with this tool into the exhibition, explore the show as if you were going in real life, and you were able to, of course, zoom into the captions, Arabic and English, and basically experience the exhibition at your own pace, And these tools have become now commonplace, of course, in the practice all over, but they have proven very helpful and quite popular also. Another feature that we have introduced then was a narrated curators tour, which is also available online. So this was a nice occasion in Sharjah to conclude this exhibition. It was still also continuing in the UK and coming to a final closure, but basically to give the opportunity to see how the running of such a large-scale exhibition over multiple countries was actually conducted. There was also a photo competition that we created, in which we were asking participants to upload photographs on an Instagram hashtag about what they would call home. And this was really diving into their own notions of home, having now been in lockdown. And the winners were awarded with photography prizes, cameras, and so forth. And you can see that most of these images actually were created at home, and were really giving a personal insight into how people were experiencing home and the domestic sphere anew. There's also a film that we created with the partners of this exhibition, speaking about what home meant to them personally. So, for example, here you can see that there are different questions and the participants are answering it from their own personal point of view. So please, you can watch all these films, of course, on the online. This is just as a kind of teaser meant for you to understand our engagements and efforts in this realm. And last but not least, our creative approaches towards using online platforms, especially on social media, in order to increase awareness of our shows. We also ran a virtual summer camp with creating DIY videos at home with materials that were easily accessible for children and teenagers, or they could also buy a kit that we would bring to them, and they could then basically release their creative energy and recreate these projects. And we also have a show right now running since September in collaboration with the University of Sharjah, in which the faculty members actually are dealing exactly with this topic with COVID-19. You can see here already two sculptures that are resembling a coronavirus, so to speak, yeah. And many of these artworks actually were produced in the lockdown. That meant also with the shortage of supplies, no access to studios and so forth. We were invited then also by Abu Dhabi Art to showcase some of these works in virtual booths, as you can see here. Also another concept that has arisen now out of the necessity to go online.
The Mahal is mainly founded by two types of funds. So private funding, which at the beginning was the founders' own capital, let's say, and also some other private donation. And then also we started having some support from mainly from the French Institute, so Institut Français, and the Goethe Institute. And lately, within this COVID framework crisis, we had the opportunity, the Goethe Institute as one of our main partners invited us to apply for a fund, which is called the Hilfsfonds, and which is a German Ministry of Foreign Affairs fund that was proposed, if I'm not wrong, globally, to which we applied and which we had at the end. When all started, we were kind of freaking out, but then suddenly we thought, okay, this is a 2 weeks thing. We will be under lockdown. We will stop whatever we are doing, and then we can restart again. But the thing is that this wasn't the case. Here in Morocco, everything was shut down, culturally and artistically. All the art spaces, galleries, theaters, movie theaters, museums, everything. I mean, we were under strict lockdown. We didn't restart the activities so everything started in March, and the deconfinement started in June, by the end of June. So at that time, when the deconfinement started, the Ministry of Culture, the Moroccan Ministry of Culture, released a sort of guide where defined certain points for each discipline or for each sector in order to give some guidelines to restart the activities. But the thing is that there were two cases, or two possible cases. There were the public spaces or the public initiatives that weren't able to restart, such as theaters, or such as movie theaters, or big museums. And then the other, the private sector were like in between two possibilities. Are we able to start, and how? So we were supposed to be able to start since we had these guidelines. But the thing is that there were some measures that we weren't all able to put into practice. So only a few galleries, I would say, were able to start, since there was quite a lot of measures that had to be imposed, as like the distance, the sanitary measures would mean to hire a company that would disinfect all the spaces and all the artworks and etc. So it was quite complicated for independent spaces and the independent initiatives to start. So this lasts for 4 months. So I would say that small initiative or independent initiative wouldn't be able and courageous enough to start till September, October. And more particularly for Mahal's case, we didn't start till November. I would like to also share with you the general picture regarding this crisis funds. So in the context of Morocco, there were two types of funds. So in the one hand, the government and the government on the public funds and the institutional funds. So in the one hand, there was the Ministry of Culture, the Moroccan Ministry of Culture funds, which had a total of 39 millions of dirhams, which means like almost 4 million of euros, which were shared mainly through or distributed through 5 sectors. So publications, theater, visual arts, and music. Particularly for the visual arts, there were some hubs for some spaces, but also a special hub or special support for artists. This support was given through the National Museum Foundation, which launched an open call to purchase artworks directly from the artists. Beside this, there were some also foreign and institutional funds, mainly the French Institute Fund, which was an open call launched to help nonprofit organizations, but also artists and independent initiatives. We don't know what was the global amount given, but we know that 17 projects were granted. And then there was this HIPS funds, which was given by the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs in collaboration with the Goethe Institute, which was launched also as an open call. We didn't start our activities since November, but public activities since November. But in the meantime, with these funds, we had the chance to work on the structure of Mahal, so we could work in an additional space or secondary space in order to create these social distancing measures. Since before the COVID, we had only one space in where we did the exhibition, we worked, we gathered, we did everything in the same space. But with the COVID, it was mandatory to have another space, which was already available, but not really adapted to like a workspace or an office space. So we worked on this. We also had the opportunity to invest on communication and into online platforms. So mainly a website for Mahal, which wasn't available. We had some trainings and some mainly training program for the team, which is a very small team, but still we tried to acquire during these hard times even more autonomy. We've always been in a very precarious, let's say, situation. But now with the COVID, we had additional difficulties. So the idea with this fund was to earn even more autonomy and also looking or having a future, a vision on the future. Since there's so much uncertainty now, we wanted to at least know that we will be able to do some basic things without any money or without any additional inputs or external inputs.
And we know the level of how the pandemic affect to our daily life, but there are actually many layers in a different aspect as well. So we took this as a kind of an image or as a metaphor to our project, and we try to rebuild all this connection with the artists that we knew. This project was supported by National Cultural Art Foundation. They call Beyond COVID-19 program. National Cultural Art Foundation is kind of one of the major funding that support most of the art and culture activity in Taiwan. And this specific grant was supposed to support the artists who invited or travel internationally. But during the COVID-19, during the pandemic, they kind of transformed this grant to support like variety of different programs, like exploring online activity or working in distance. And the second project that we did like later 2020 is a project named A Fly Enter Immense Breeze of the Sea. It's an exchange project that engage a curator and performing artists from Indonesia, Philippines, Taiwan, and Thailand to collaborate. And this project we work with a foundation named Cultural Taiwan Foundation. It's kind of a new foundation. At the beginning, when we proposed the idea to exploring sound and experimental music, it was aimed to like travel in different countries in the region and participating in the sound and experimental music scene like there. But during the pandemic, it's become impossible. But for me, it was quite impressed that because this foundation, they are really helping. They came and they're really concerning how we can, they're not stop the project, but instead they're trying to conduct and transform the project in a different form, different progress. So later we are able to conduct this project with the foundation and also 4 different curators from 4 different regions, 4 different countries by working in distance and trying out different kind of tools and platforms, such as like in the basic like Facebook, Instagram, and Skype. I would say it's a bit weird. As you may know, like the pandemic condition in Taiwan is somehow not really bad. So the funny thing is, in the later 2020, our exhibition and activity are actually, I feel it's even more than before. It seems like everyone was trapped at the beginning of the year, but later the thing just happened at, like everywhere. So many exhibition and so many events happening in the city. But still, since our project mostly work with the artists and collective in other country, so most of the time we are like sitting in front of the computer and watch the screen and meeting. Somehow remind me this. Some of you might know this is the shortest science fiction that was written in 1948. It says the last man on Earth sat alone in the room. There was a knock on the door. It's a fiction because it could be quite scary. Like you are the only person in the world, but why there's a knock on the door? But every time in 2020, when I sit in front of the computer, like waiting to start the meeting or the online conference, I always feel like I'm actually alone, but also waiting for someone to knock my door to open some art and cultural activity. For me, like as a member, director, and maybe organizer of the collective and art space and the project organizer, somehow I need to kind of restrict our like for the safety issue, we need to kind of restrict our movement and mobility. But in the other hand, as an artist, I found that we could actually learn a lot from the COVID or from the virus as well.
Of course, we have all had to pass or to implement the restriction, not only the restrictions, but also the sanitary measures. But I would like to know, how much did you feel the COVID impacted? I mean, all these restrictions in terms of cultural programming. Did you really feel like a huge difference compared to your previous way of working?
For us personally, there has been a soar in online programming and online presence, a presence I think that will continue also after the pandemic, because it opens up really the world to you in a way that we may have never actually experienced if we hadn't been forced and exposed to actually deal with this. So because everything is, possible to showcase online, even though it is not the actual experience in person, that I guess can never be replaced. But at least it's an approximation of experiencing an art center, an exhibition, an event, a workshop. At the end of the day, there is still the individual on the other side with whom you are communicating. And it's just a means to an end, really, to facilitate access. That's, I think, the first and foremost important point. We are now over different time zones connected to each other in this very talk. And it helps us actually to understand our global world even more, because we are all affected by the same thing. And it is kind of a collective experience that we are all going through right now. And at the same time, it is possible to do online programming to a certain extent also without money, and also to think more creatively about how programming can be delivered. So past the usual tools and the first things that may come to mind, but this method of engaging with the audience, having tours, virtual tours, or even just the medium of film that literally brings you the exhibition to your doorstep is actually a feature that I think nobody will want to, neglect in the future. So I think actually it has given us the opportunity to think creatively about our programming and approach in general, and to open up more to the international world.
For OCAC, we are always engaging artists and people in person. And we always found that this kind of face-to-face dialogue really help and really generate something that is not replaceable. Is it like copy or generate this kind of understanding, even though we are in a distance or we are in a cyberspace? Maybe it would be the main topic for the coming year, like this year, because we will still continue the experimental sound project this year as well. And the Indonesian curator proposing, like, how about we let one of their sound artists, which is a drummer, do a online non-stop drumming, depend on how many donation. Like when people donate like 10 US, he will non-stop playing drum for 10 minutes. If you donate like 30 US, he will play non-stop for another 30 minutes. And maybe it's very poor as a sound art, but it's a very direct interaction when you are in a virtual space with the random audience. So we kind of try to adapt all different ideas from all the friends to maybe try it a little bit.
During the past months of the COVID-19 pandemic, all the arts organizations across the globe have been impacted heavily at every level of their operations and structures. While many arts organizations open their doors, again, probably applying strict and safe hygiene protocols to keep both visitors and staff free. But we also heard about they are recently closed again to the public as a result of thermal restriction of COVID-19 has acted as magnifying glass on the wall, structure and functions of arts and cultural organizations. And it has increased the existing gaps and differences in the art world, and also has demonstrated the lacking skill and knowledge, lacking flexibility and agile structures, as well as diverse resources of income, can lead to the arts organization having to decrease or abolish their main activities and tasks in services of society, or even face the threat of permanent closure. Of course, we all wish that the whole situation will be overcome, but when it sort of passed, shall we just go back to what we were, or we are actually kind of in pushing to a new kind of scenario.